I'm gonna show you a sample of how you can plan a lesson plan. This is well, when you want to teach grammar and vocabulary only. So the first thing I think you need to know is understand that all the lesson plans are just like a guidance that you need to follow. When you're actually teaching, you realize that there are plenty of expected situations that happen during the class, but well, the lesson plan is a way to predict them, but also trying to follow a certain path so your class will have a specific purpose and you don't get lost. So when you start planning, you have to get to know the population. You need to know who you're going to teach. In this case, the lesson plan that I did is based on preparatoria, all right? So in the classroom, we have 45 students and they are from like 16 and both, 17 and 16. They are in their second year preparatoria, so this is the last semester that they are going to have English. So based on that, but at least in the preparatoria, we don't have a specific book. So sometimes we need to like get to know new resources, but the topics are given by the syllabus. So it's important again to understand that the size of this classroom is quite large. So I think when you want to get your students to work, it could be better to do it in teams. It depends again on the classroom conditions as well. And this is for a B1 level students. They are meant to have like previous experience with the language, and they of course have some knowledge. At least here at the preparatoria that I work, they already have like some language certifications in some cases. Other students, they don't have them, but we can take advantage from the ones that actually did know how to use the language. So when you start planning, well, you write the topics. In this case, it's based on second conditional, and as these are hypothetical and unreal situations, you can combine it with vocabulary. In this case, I decided to do it about traveling, and so we're going to try to think about unreal situations, the things that we would like to do if we had the chance. And so you can combine the you can give the language an actual purpose. So that's important when you also teach that. For sure, grammar is necessary because they are going to have a test, they are going to review the topics later, but all the language, the purpose of it is communication. So when you plan, again, you have to be very careful with the verbs that you use when you want to create objectives. For instance, I wouldn't use understand or like learn, because you cannot be sure like in one single lesson that the topic is going to be understood. Instead, you can use recognize, identify, like some like try to describe actions that they are going to be able to do at the end of the lesson. And for this lesson plan, I follow a communicative language teaching, a CLT approach, because the thing with these students is that they already have previous experience with the language, so they tend to want to use it because they don't use it, the language outside the classroom. So it would be a great opportunity for them to actually put into practice what they are getting to know. And at the same time, it's to also foster a certain idea in our students that even though you might know grammar, when you try to speak, right, that there are going to be small mistakes, and you have to work to that. So that's what I decided to use a CLT approach. I think for this kind of classes, especially because we only have like 2 hours, 3 hours per week, students, well, they have the chance to do it in the classroom. They also get the chance to engage in like gain confidence. But it also depends on the purpose of the course, for sure. But in this case, at least for the preparatoria, I think it works just fine. And so when you start your class, for sure you have to welcome your students. You do some small talk and some ice break. So I often ask them like how are they, right, and how they're feeling today. And so you like get the chance to listen to them and then like get them ready for the class. And for the first activity, which is a warm up, instead of like giving the topic right away, like today students were going to check the second conditional, you can try to do something different. And there is this game, well, a kind of game that is called Chinese Whispers. So you give some sentences to your students and they are going to tell each other the sentence, and in the end you have to ask them, I mean, to say what they understood from their classmates, and you can get to see if they are actually practicing or like if their speaking is also improving. And I mean, what I suggest from the conditionals is that as these students, once again, they have previous experience with the language, we need to make them recall what they already know. And so instead of like giving them isolated sentences, we can actually use the other conditionals. So in this case, I add one from zero conditional, one from the first conditional, and another one from the second conditional. So this is just a way to get them into the topic and to like, they will remember, oh, I think we saw this, I don't know, like 2 months ago, and it was based on this. So it has to be something simple because the class is really large. So, I mean, we have to finish. And this is an inductive approach. Basically, instead of like going there right to the topic, we are going to make our students identify what they already know. And this is great because they are going to use their critical thinking. I mean, so you're gonna, once you have the sentences, you write them on the board and you start describing like what are the differences between each one of them. And you again foster critical thinking, also problem solving, because you're gonna ask a lot of questions. They get to practice again their speaking. And as in this classroom, we have different levels of language proficiency. It can be great because the students who already have like a high level of proficiency, they are going to help us to describe the structures. And the ones that they have maybe a low language level of proficiency, they are going to get to identify certain patterns. And I think it's a great opportunity as well, because as teachers, we know how to explain the topics, but sometimes when they are talking to their classmates, they have a different overview of the grammar structure. So we allow them at the same time to provide feedback of how they understand that the language works. And again, as teachers, we can identify also common areas for improvement. It means that if we get to see that somebody else is struggling, where we're going to try to pay attention. So at least for this context, I mean, from the one that I give you in the lesson plan, it just works great. The only thing is that it's quite time consuming because you have to ask a lot of questions. You have to write the information on the board, and you have to be like using colors. And I think this is kind of like what we have discussing, that we need to use different colors so students will get the chance to identify what are the difference. So I think here, again, the purpose is to first recall what we know, then identify the difference in use, because the students tend to get confused with the first and the second conditional, especially because the structure is like, well, not the meaning, but the purpose, it's something that they often think that it's the same. And we know that the first conditional is used for just like hypothetical situations, and the second one is for unreal situations, but they are still in the present. So it will be great. And then you can also ask them if they believe this is a fact or an opinion. Remember that the zero conditional is used for facts. So they get the chance to know the meaning, the structure, and they try to use their own critical thinking still to discover what might be the structure for each conditional. So after you finish with this, I think at least in some courses, because it depends on the level of proficiency, you can also use Spanish. I think it doesn't matter if you use it. To be honest, with some classes, I would use it myself because some students, they don't understand what you're saying. But that's what we use. Well, not we use, but that's what we rely on the students, that they have a higher level of proficiency because they explain each other the things that they don't understand. And well, for this thing, we will just need the board for sure and markers probably, and that's it. So once you finish this whole explanation, which is like trying to deduce what we know, now we go into the topic. So you might ask, why is it necessary? Because even though we already described the structure, some students are struggling to get the grammar. So we need now, we can use the deductive grammar approach. So the at least the pattern, the sentence patterns will be clear, and we will be able to move on to the following activity. So for this, I try to use some videos or a presentation, because our students, they also need to, they are going to listen to us, but they also need to see what we are checking. So at least for this, I chose a video. I truly recommend you the channel. It has a lot of content. All is for English. It's even simple present, sometimes even about sounds. So, I mean, throughout the video, you're gonna play it, and you're gonna maybe pause it in some sentence patterns. So you explain, I would suggest in Spanish, exactly what you're looking for, especially with the sentence structure, which I think is, for instance, like here. They give you already sentences, and you just highlight, like the first sentence is a simple past, the second one is the use of would plus the verb in infinitive, and you just like remark or highlight why is it important to know the sentence pattern. So, and you give the students a chance as well to write down some notes, so they will use them later for the activity that we're going to carry out. And at the same time, they are listening, they are watching the information, and you are there explaining the whole structure. And if they have questions, you give the chance to ask you as a teacher. And also, it's less time consuming, because in the end, at the end of this video, we would suggest that that's it, that they actually have the information. They have now the tools to carry out the following activity. So this is just grammar, like what they are expected to get. So once they have the whole overview of just the sentence pattern, we can move on to the vocabulary that we're going to teach. In this case, once again, so grammar is not like isolated tenses. We need to use it actually to speak. So we're going to combine it with vocabulary, and the vocabulary that you're going to choose, it depends on the student's level, also the amount of time you have to practice, what maybe the book says. And again, so here we don't have a book, so we're going to use it for, like, we're going to try to, as a teacher, you use like the vocabulary that you want to employ. So as it's about traveling, you're going to ask your students the following question. If you had an unlimited budget, if they don't understand budget, you can explain it in Spanish, but I think at least for this class, it's going to be clear. Where would you like to go? And then you're going to have some potential, like 5 destinations. Let me share with you. Here. I think is here. For example, something like this, you have like some places you can use a presentation. At least on the preparatoria that I work, they have like projectors and speakers. So you're gonna put like some destination like Tokyo, Paris, Cancun, Barcelona, and then they are gonna discuss some of these places. So once you have that, you now ask them, like, what would you need to take with you if you during a trip? And they say, okay, maybe I need my cell phone, I don't know, luggage. I would need a camera because I want to take pictures. maybe my passport. And so they start discussing some words, but you are going to provide them with more. And for that, I would suggest to use some flashcards with a presentation. So this is really useful because instead of like translating the whole word, you give them the image and the word. And so based on what they can see, they deduce the meaning of the word. So, I mean, when we are beginners, translation is like it's a resource that we often use for a lot of purposes, but as this is a B1 class, well, it's time to move a little bit from translating, and at the same time, it could be meaningful for them to remember the picture and the word rather than the translation. Because in some cases, I mean, as teacher, we often mention some collocations, some idioms, some words and phrases. They don't have a clear translation, so we need to understand them like as a whole. So I think it could be useful for them in the future. And somehow creating a mental image also helps you to like create a long-term memory. So you establish a relationship between what you see and the word, the concept. So that will be the first step. So now they have the vocabulary. You show them some flashcards using a presentation, and you give them like some bank work. So they are going to use it later. So as I mentioned before, this is based on the CLT. So all the lesson plan must have a communicative like objective. So in this case, we're going to combine the use of vocabulary and grammar to produce something, which is going to be speaking. For speaking is great because if they write, we have to consider that it's a really large class. So we will have to at least spend like 20 or 30 minutes checking everything that even one person. Right, so it will be time consuming and at least not effective for the size of the classroom. And so we're going to ask them to do a presentation, a really brief presentation. I would suggest in pairs if they want to work together, but I think here it can be better to do it of members of 4, because if we get to 5, then they are going to, they are not going to work. So it could be one pair, maybe one group of 3, and then you give them the the number of the members for the group, for the teams. So in this case, something important as well is that you need to be a monitor. You have given your students the tools, the information, and everything they need. So you give them instructions. I think sometimes it's better to give them, like, you speak those, you explain the instructions, but also if you can actually write them on the board or in a presentation is best, because some students, they actually need to see what they are expected to do, not just listen. And then you give the instructions and you give the following situation. So imagine that you have a chance to travel, you have unlimited time and budget once again, and you're going to plan your dream trip. So for this, you have the following questions. Where would you like to go? Who would you like to travel with? What would you pack? Where would you stay? What would you do there? And what souvenirs would you buy? You give it the time. So probably the ones that have traveled abroad, they are going to tell you like information from other country, but you can actually use what we have here in Mexico or something close to Jalapa as well. So they would have and they can picture what they would like to do. So in this case, most of the time we ask them to bring like a board or something, or like a piece of paper. So in some pictures, because some students, they don't have access to a laptop or they don't have internet, so they can work on something like on paper and they can do the activity. But it depends once again of the resources that your students have. And you're going to give a specific time. What I also suggest is to put a big clock on the presentation, so they can see how much time they have left. If you're going to give them 20 minutes, they can see that, time is, is going by and they have to finish. Especially because they are in preparatoria, so sometimes they tend to talk about other things and they get distracted. And now as a teacher, you're only going to be a monitor. If they ask you some questions, you're going to guide them, but you're going to let them practice what they already, or you have already checked with them, and also help each other, because this is something from a teamwork. They have to come to an agreement to actually write the sentences and know what they are expected to do. So I think the only thing that sometimes we have to really highlight is that what they are going to describe must be as a full sentence. If I had unlimited budget, I would go to, I don't know, Canada, and then you say it like that. So now that they are actually, they're trying to do the activity, you as a teacher, you're gonna check what your students are doing, the progress, and also what they are actually carrying out. And so once the time is done, you're going to ask them to give the presentation. They're going to ask you if you have to be just one person. I think that depends on you. My suggestion would be that as there are 6 questions, at least all of them, they are going to speak once. So that's the purpose, that they actually perform what they know and what they just discover. And now, as to avoid to make them feel seen or vulnerable, when you want to give your feedback, you're going to give it as a whole group. So you're going to say, oh, I noticed that you forgot to add the infinitive form after would, and you instead of add an s. Remember that after modal verbs, we don't add any kind of ending to the verb, and that's basically it. So at the end of the lesson, you would see if your lesson plan actually achieved what you intended. There are a lot of unexpected situations, and sometimes, because you can run out of time, you're not going to be able to finish, but it can happen here. But well, in this case, this is I think we have 2 hours, but you can give it for another class. And if you don't have the time to do it for the following class, you can even ask them to record themselves and upload it in a kind of app, so you would check them later with the pronunciation. And I think basically is it. So I think just as a piece of advice, definitely when you start planning, you have to first of all define the topic when it's about grammar. And I would suggest and say that sometimes planning a lesson plan about grammar, it's a little bit easier because it's information that you are already familiar with as a teacher because you speak the language. But sometimes unscrambling the whole complexity of the pattern, of the sense pattern or the tense can be hard. That's why I think that we need to have a clear overview of the class conditions and our teaching context.
Thanks so much, Luisa, for this explanation. So now we would like to listen everyone, any one of you who have a comment or a question, please, we listen to you. Yes, Fanny?
Well, I think it is important to analyze the process and the steps to follow to create this kind of guides. Because I think for I've never something like this before, but it's kind of and
Well, Fanny, you can write it your comment in the chat and I can read it aloud. Meanwhile, I don't know if someone else have a comment or a question.